The nightmares may be over, but there still remains an unfinished arc called the Crystal Crisis. Come with me as I continue to watch through the Clone Wars for the first time. Well, hello there. My name's Jeremy and welcome back to Freeform Disney, where I talk about all aspects of Disney, from the animated movies to the theme parks to Star Wars, Marvel, and Pixar, and the TV shows, and everything else in between. And that is why it's Freeform. And keep coming back every day for new daily content. If you're not subscribed yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And we're back once again. It's time today for one last bonus first time watching for the Clone Wars. This is the unfinished arc, Crystal Crisis. Unfinished only really in terms of the visuals, it seems. Everything else seems to be right where it needs to be, including some great voice acting in there. So let us jump on in. The first episode of this 4-episode arc is A Death on Utapau. Now we're back to the good old yellow Star of the Clone Wars intro. And, well, we're off to Utapau to recover something that was lost in the war, is what we're told. And we get to expand our knowledge of Utapau, so we see the Pauans, the Utai, the Amani. We get to meet an Inspector June because, hey, somebody died. And who is it? It's a Jedi Master. Dun, 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 dun. Who apparently was the first Jedi Master to visit in years to Utapau. Well, now they've had another one because Obi-Wan's there too. And we get this little mystery as to how Master Tuon died. Now, apparently she's a bit more of a rogue Jedi, and so she kind of goes off and does her own things. And so that's why she ended up here and why the Jedi Council didn't know she was headed here anyway. But we got a little mystery to figure out what happened, because there's no obvious marks on her or anything as to how she died, except for, well, some scrapes on the knees and elbows. And that leads them to, hey, well, we found the body here, and she must have crawled from over here, and there's a tiny hole in a window way over there. So, we know she was hit with a laser to the optical nerve, leading to her death. Or at least that's the suspicion, which of course is the correct suspicion. Good old Jedi intuition, we'll call it. So really, we get through that pretty quickly when it comes down to it. Then they head up there to the room where that was actually happening to try to figure out who went ahead and killed Master Tuon. And we get a Toydarian in there, and hey, that's kind of neat. Toss another Toydarian in. Now, there's a lot of fun in this arc. Like the goo that gets over Anakin's boot and hands and yeah. But we also have some other more serious notes, like we get to see Anakin quick to anger and intimidation, really probably because of hatred for, shall we say, a certain Toydarian? Yeah. And so that was a moment that was nice to toss in there. Now this episode really is one point to the next, to the next, to the next. So for the Toydarian, we found out, hey, Magna Guards. That sounds like Grievous and Dooku. And also that slime we figured out is actually from an Amani. Now that means we're heading way on down to go see the Amani. But first we get to have the cliche, Governor's like, I'm pressuring you guys to go in and leave. Could he possibly be involved in this? Nah, that would be too obvious. Yeah, he is involved. We'll find that out later. Now, the creatures we move around in here on are these cool bird-like creatures, and those I think would have been really cool to have actually seen animated. Not to mention really just getting to see more of Utapau and actually having that animation in there would have been nice. Who knows, maybe someday it'll still happen, you never know. Well, anyway, we're down to the Amani, who, I gotta tell you, sound very Hutt-like in their speech and the way they talk. Not sure if that's intentional or not, and not sure what the heck kind of connection one would ever make between those two. Anyway, and well, that interaction with the Amani's done, and so then we move off to our next spot, and we're off into a cave, and there's this another of these cool things that to see animated. We've got this really funky giant water creature that follows them, and then Anakin kills. Well, don't get me wrong, it attacked them, so yeah, there is that. Then we get a chase scene with the Magna Guards on our bird-like creatures, following them on their little speedery kind of things. Now, I gotta tell you, action scenes are so much less interesting when you don't have finalized animation. It just really is. So I kind of have to imagine in my own head, what would this have been like if it was actually finalized? And try to put myself there. But that's unsurprisingly a little tricky. Eventually we get to the fight scene, and this looks like it would have been a cool fight scene if it had been fully animated. Now normally it shouldn't be too difficult for either of them to take on a Magna Droid, but they're trying not to kill them because they need the information out of the Magna Droids to be able to uncover the entire plot and figure out what the heck's going on. Although that doesn't stop Anakin from just essentially getting fed up and killing one out of frustration and anger. Purposely. Damn, man. And after he cut one of its arms off too, he made good progress. It's like, dang. Which is also a nice piece. It feeds into who Anakin is and his growing problems. They end up eventually subduing the one that Obi-Wan was fighting, and they find out the Sugis, major arm dealers, apparently were involved. And that means there's probably no ordinary weapon if Grievous is involved, etc., etc. So next up, we'll be checking out the planes on Monty. Clearly a setup for next episode. And we end this one in another piece that would be nice. There was a funeral pyre for Master Tuon, and the Governor and Inspector were both there. And I thought it was interesting how we had Anakin and Obi-Wan off on the side. It felt like it was potentially going for trying to be reminiscent of Episode 1 a little. The very ending there with Anakin and Obi-Wan. Not sure if that was an intentional reference or not. Anyway, so yeah, that was this episode, and it was a fine enough episode. I gotta tell you, it's a lot harder to grade my opinion on it without the finalized animation, though. And this really was a point A to point B to point C to point D kind of episode. A little too much so for me. It seemed a little too straightforward. But yeah, nevertheless, ultimately, seeing Utapau was really cool, and the investigation seems interesting enough. And very clearly this was a part 1. So off to episode 2, In Search of Crystal. So we head off to that Plains Amani village. They're flying on their little bird things. And, well, they're mostly primitive weapons, but also one with a precision laser dart gun, which they kind of should have guessed if you're going after arms dealers. But Anakin being Anakin just kind of rushed on in there. And the banter gets even stronger in this episode. There's a little in the previous one, but oh man, this episode, there's a ton of banter. And we get Anakin griping a lot about walking. Although, as Obi-Wan says, well, yes, since you rushed in and got our mounts killed. No kidding. Now, here is one of what I thought was the best things of the entire arc. We have this conversation because Anakin is talking and just accidentally slips. He's like, I'll contact Ahsoka, maybe she can... Yeah. Ow. Just ow. And this leads to a conversation between Anakin and Obi-Wan. Not at that moment, because he doesn't want to talk about it at that point. But after they set up camp, they do talk a little. Anakin's conversation with Obi-Wan is just filled with so much emotion. He feels so bad about Ahsoka having left, and he misses her so much. Really, he takes the responsibility on himself. He takes it as his own fault for what happened. And heck, on top of all that, of course, there is a lot of blame going on to the Jedi Council for that. And, well, they certainly deserve that blame. Not that Obi-Wan's piece at the end probably helps a lot here. Sure, he'll grant that mistakes were made and all. But part of the Jedi way is not letting emotion cloud your better judgment. And that's precisely what Ahsoka did, even in her most critical moment. Yeah. One's gotta say, somebody not letting emotion cloud their better judgment might also have chosen to leave too. Just saying. Putting yourself in that kind of a position might not be the best. And frankly, the Jedi have been letting themselves get clouded in all kinds of stuff they've been doing. And yet another person telling Anakin to just bury those emotions. That always works well. But the last bit we got, moving on beyond that, was more foreshadowing, shall we say. Talking about how would Obi-Wan go ahead and feel if Anakin turned into a major disappointment. That's not the same. It's precisely the same. You took me under your wing and practically raised me. I'm your Padawan, just as Ahsoka was mine. How well would you sleep knowing I failed you? Not very well, I would imagine. Luckily, that isn't true and never will be. Woo! Had fun writing that line, didn't we? Yeah, very true. Hey, we'll probably get to dig into that a little more with the upcoming Obi-Wan series. I'm going to imagine that'll pop up in there. Oh, yeah. Having to live with that. Now, that is some guilt sitting on your head. Yeah. A hell of a lot of self-doubt, I would imagine. Well, anyway, time goes on. Anakin said he'd keep watch, and they end up getting ambushed in the morning because I guess he fell asleep. But hey, we have some fun banter that passes it off as a brilliant plan to lure their enemy in. And again, back to the comment on the banter. Heck, we've got this little piece on, well, can some of these aliens even understand us? Hi, my friend and I were just discussing our escape plan out loud in front of you. Yeah, no, I don't think that one understands us. Yeah. Well, eventually they bluff that they know about the weapons deal, so they get involved in all of that. On the list of amusing things that happen is that Obi-Wan a little bit later actually has to tell Anakin that he admits it was actually a good plan. The plan that wasn't really a plan, that was actually just falling asleep and getting ambushed. Yeah, that plan. Well, we get more good Anakin Obi-Wan banter as it goes on, and man, I miss the Anakin Obi-Wan banter and wish, to be honest, that we'd gotten a little more of that over the course of Clone Wars. Things like the whole piece where Obi-Wan's like, really, Anakin? Everyone inside the Outer Rim knows about the weapon? Oh, so I guess you're the only one who can think on his feet. Apparently. Nice. Well, they find out it's a crystal, and then more walking. What? More walking? I'm not tired of walking. No. Tired of being a prisoner? Yes. Oh, look, another mound. The thrills never stop on Utapau. Very good, Anakin. No, I mean it. Look at all this grass. Have you ever been so excited? Anakin, that's quite enough. You're right. I prefer the mound to the grass. They just really stand out. Now, I don't know that there's been a time where we've seen that level or degree of sarcasm out of Anakin before. Just the combination of the banter and really taking the two of them to this kind of extent at one point makes it an interesting piece that stands out amongst all of the other arcs within Clone Wars, even if this one didn't quite get finished and isn't, I guess, fully officially an arc in Clone Wars, however you want to look at that. Oh, and Obi-Wan then gets a nice little episode 4, A New Hope reference with the no small moon. Wait, that's no mound. That's a spaceship. Ba-dum-bum. Well, anyway, they get brought over to that spaceship, and, well, our villains, quote-unquote, I guess they're not really bad enough to be villains. Villain of the episode, take your pick. Anyway, they contact Count Dooku to try to extort a little more money out of him for killing the Jedi. In our classic cliche, over-the-top bad guy thing, though, Dooku tells him that when Grievous gets there, they'll get what they deserve. I bet he will pay us double. Yeah, that's it. Exactly. Classic over-the-top villain. Wait. And then guess what time it is? It's action scene time. So we get this big ol' action scene because Anakin and Obi-Wan unsurprisingly break out of their captivity in there and up into the ventilation shaft, which gets another bit of that fun banter and wit. Brilliant idea. This is a much narrower space. No room to maneuver. We'll be shot for sure. Sorry. I thought it would be a good place to hide. It's never a good place to hide. We're always in the ventilation duct. Every ship we go in. Meta humor right here while we're at it, talking about ventilation ducts. Certainly true about that, but also there's meta beyond even Star Wars on that one. And actually there's a joke later in the 4th episode of the arc, and I'll touch it now just so I get it all in the same spot. But there's a joke about, the droids are looking for them on board a ship, and and we even scanned all the ventilation ducts. Because I guess normally you don't? Yeah. Nice little bit of meta humor. Well, eventually they get through the ducts, they get into the armory, Anakin's checking out these different blasters, we get to have some fun with that, and he gets to double hand some blasters, although Obi-Wan will keep his hands off them and just keep using his mind. Such clumsy weapons, after all. And Anakin gets to show off his fun blaster moves in a big ol' fight. Are you quite done showing off, Anakin? No one's impressed. In walks one of our aliens. Impressive, Jedi! And Anakin then kills that Sugi with force activating the lightsaber, some fancy moves on those. Alright, now that was impressive. Gotta use the civilized weapons if you want Obi-Wan to be impressed. No blasters right there. But yeah, really this whole action kind of sums up as you get this action piece here, then we do a chase, then we do another action, we go in the armory, then we have another action piece outside of it, then we do another chase action, then eventually the dealer escapes. Surprise, surprise. And they find that there's this ginormous kyber crystal in there, far bigger than they've seen before. Now, if this action had all been animated, it would have been so much better. Now I'm going to say that probably again and again through this arc, that dang, if only there'd been finalized animation. But I think it hurts the most during the action scenes. While the rest of the episodes can really be held up a bit by what's being said and the dialogue and the voice acting, action scenes don't have that to fall back on as much. There can be a little bit of dialogue in there, but so much of it is watching the visuals, watching the fight, and yeah, it makes it so hard here, and I'm sure my ratings of these would probably be higher if they were fully animated. As much as I try to take that into account a little bit here, still. At any rate, enjoyed this second episode much more than the first one. There was so much more good banter, and definitely it easily got an extra point for that Anakin Obi-Wan piece really talking about Ahsoka. That was really good. And that then takes us off to the third episode, Crystal Crisis. So now Anakin and Obi-Wan have to figure out how the heck they're going to take that giant ship with the kyber crystal and leave. And, well, they can't just lift the ship off because, well, 3 of the 4 engines were sabotaged. Surprise, surprise. So off we go to Banterville. Getting animals while bantering. Yeah, that's it. But hey, they get one eventually after hijinks ensue, and although Anakin says, hey, next time you can get the beast, you're better with them anyway. Obi-Wan, next time I'll bring Master Windu. Yeah, 'cause he's loads of fun, says Anakin. And I think we're all agreeing with Anakin on that one. Probably even Obi-Wan. And on we go. So they got their stuff back. Our enemies are getting ready to come at them. We know that's coming. And then, well, they're going to get the giant kyber crystal down onto a hover sled. Now, they first have to cut the wires holding it and take it down with the force. Although this actually gets to this funny little piece that you never seem to see, because heroes always know exactly how to do this kind of thing. But the banter there, again, this has to be probably the most fun arc in this kind of way. Whoever was writing it certainly had that kind of sense of humor, shall we say. But they're about to do it, Anakin's all like, wait. Are we cutting first and then using the force? I was thinking that we do it at the same time. How exactly do we do that? Well, one hand to cut the strap and the other to force grab the crystal. One hand for something that heavy? We only have to keep it from crashing to the ground, Anakin. We don't have to hurl it like a grenade. All right. I said all right. I mean, how often do you ever see anybody debating exactly how you go about these processes? Although, in real life, you would always probably talk about this first, or things would go to hell pretty fast. Of course, we don't have time to have those kind of discussions, which is also why it's so much more fun to bring this in a spot where you have time for the humor. So, nicely done here. On and on we go, more humor as we go, more banter. They're off with their really slow creature, pulling the giant kyber crystal so they can get to a port and take it off. The Sugi eventually catch up with them on speeders. We have another battle, which goes their way, surprise, surprise. And we get this interesting little thing where Obi-Wan is actually stacking up their dead, and this little tiny piece in here about respecting the dead. Because as Obi-Wan says, well, hey, they may be their enemies, but he still respects them as living beings and finds it important to do that. Just an interesting little touch. Anakin, of course, doesn't agree at all, because, hey, they're not living anymore, so who cares? And I'd respect them more if they weren't killing me. Or trying to kill me, I should say. But it's an interesting touch right there. We haven't gotten to see that kind of side of Obi-Wan, or shall we say the Jedi, in terms of respecting their enemies after they die. Another one of those things that I think there's just not time to show, or, of course, in certain action scenes, you wouldn't have the ability to do it as a person there anyway. Well, at any rate, off we go, and hey, it's more action scenes, because this episode here is heavily one action scene after another as we're going on this chase. So it's the next wave of the Sugi. And now we get to see the kyber crystal get hit by cannon blasts, and it gets refracted in multiple directions and ends up destroying a lot of our enemy. Want to talk about cool looking effects? That probably would have been really fun to see right there. Well, I can't say it was quite as cool with the unfinished animation. So then our fight continues into a sinkhole as the Magna Guards are after them at this point. So we've switched to which ones are after them and closest. And, oh, by the way, our arms dealer tries to bluff Grievous. That works really well. Being the super level-headed villain that Grievous is, you know that he was let go with a warning after that. A warning that involved slicing his head off with lightsabers. Something like that. One last interesting thing in that chase that I'll comment. After Grievous and the Magna Guards are both after them, we actually run into a herd of those creatures. Heck if I remember their name. I've probably seen it, but the creatures that Obi-Wan rides in Revenge of the Sith over down on Utapau. So we run into a herd of them, and that's kind of cool. It also helps them lose Grievous in the back because he gets dismounted, etc., etc. And hey, they make it to the port. And remember, everybody at the port is a good guy because there was nobody suspicious in the government. Other than the governor, that guy, and all the battle droids coming at them right now. No one else suspicious though. And that means the crystal gets loaded onto Grievous' ship and heads off, but Obi-Wan and Anakin chose to wait until after the crystal was loaded onto the ship to make their escape plan and their fight. It usually is better because otherwise this would be a 3-episode arc and not a 4-episode arc. So it was probably a good call on their part. But then they go ahead and break out and jump into another ship and chase after the crystal. Meanwhile, we get our reason that we never saw the governor later on, say in Revenge of the Sith, because Grievous kills him. And that's the end of that episode right there. So it was a decent episode. I'd say it was better than the first one. Not as good as the second because it doesn't have the level of wit and humor the second episode did. And also probably part of what hurts it too is that there was lots and lots of action in this one. And again, that's hard to make work as well with the unfinished animation that we had here. But yeah, it probably would have been pretty fun if we'd actually gotten to see more of that in that way. But I wish there had been a little more time given for some of the slow portions rather than feeling the need for the action all the way through. And that takes us to the last episode of the Crystal Crisis arc, which is episode 4, The Big Bang. Now we actually get to start off with Obi-Wan talking to the Jedi Council, so we actually break away a little bit. And we bring in some other Jedi to talk, mostly Yoda, but Mace is there as well, and some others in the background. But the real fun piece of it really was the last bit, because Yoda goes ahead and tells Obi-Wan that he must not be so cavalier at the end of the discussion. And then Obi-Wan's all, cavalier? To Anakin he's talking here, and he's like, you're cavalier all the time, and no one says anything about it. I'm just better at it, that's all. Yeah, Obi-Wan Cavalier, not the person you'd usually accuse of that. I suppose if someone's cavalier all the time, though, it just isn't something you talk about as much, right? More fun banter about being a backseat driver later as they're going ahead and flying and also being chased by Grievous, and good stuff, good stuff. Then they do a number 5 special, which is apparently the old escape pod trick where they launch out of their escape pods over into the bay while using the ship to disguise their departure. Or in this case, ram it into the hyperdrive so as to delay the ship from getting out. So this is the big cargo ship that the crystal's gotten taken onto. Now, here, the other half, Anakin's door won't close. For who knows what the heck reason, there's some malfunction. Although the real reason is that we have to make it so he doesn't see Grievous, which has been one of those constant oddities of Clone Wars, is always finding an excuse how Anakin never actually meets General Grievous at some point prior to Revenge of the Sith. Because we know in Revenge of the Sith that it's the first time he ever meets him. And so in this case, because he had a malfunction with his door, he gets launched into a different bay than Obi-Wan does, and that's how he didn't meet Grievous this time around. Heck, one could make a list of all the weird excuses as to how Anakin didn't meet General Grievous over the course of the Clone Wars. It'd be an amusing list, I'm sure. And, for poor Obi-Wan, well, Grievous is in there with some droids, although he then fights Grievous and loses really fast, actually, and easily, frankly, which was a little bizarre. Oh, and also, instead of killing Obi-Wan, Grievous just captures him. Why? To be honest, I don't feel there was ever a good excuse on this one. Sometimes we've had good excuses. You want to use them as captives for this, that, or the other, sure. But this time, it's really stretched thin, especially because of what happens later, where, well, Grievous talks to Dooku, and then gives the order to go ahead and have Obi-Wan executed. Now, on top of that, instead of the droids just walking in there and shooting Obi-Wan, who is sitting completely restrained, no, we've got to take him out of there and walk him to an execution chamber because we can't just kill him like that. Right. So, you're going to kill a Jedi. We'll just take a couple battle droids to escort him to an execution chamber, rather than killing him while he's restrained, or even somehow keeping him in restraints? Anything? Or better restraints than a pair of handcuffs, let's put it that way. Yeah, okay. When we talk about stretching believability, the fact that all of this happened stretches the believability just a little bit this time. Just a teensy bit. Well, anyway. Meanwhile, Anakin gets on the ship. He heads off his own direction, recovers Obi-Wan's lightsaber pretty easily, really, but then again, it's fighting battle droids, so not a surprise. He notices where Obi-Wan is. What? Got yourself captured again, old man? Tapping on the screen where he's at, which is, yep, there you go, it's Anakin. Oh, by the way, while Obi-Wan is being escorted over to that execution chamber, he does this whole thing about the Yavin Code, which apparently is a code from about 1,000 years ago that all prisoners are supposed to be blindfolded prior to execution, which nobody else seems to know about other than Obi-Wan. Well, Anakin does once he comes back and saves him, just because he's heard Obi-Wan do this talk before. It's like, the Yavin Code thing again? Yeah. Oh, and we get a fun little ribbing him back with the whole, hey, this weapon is your life, try not to lose it. I see you listen to some things, I tell you. Yeah. Good times. Well, let's see. We have more good banter here, more good banter there. Some good banter when they're stuck in the vault with the crystal for a bit. Obi-Wan tries to tell Anakin to have patience, and Anakin's all, patience? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then Obi-Wan's like, it doesn't help when you sum up our situation, hammer home a point. Only when the point is going against you, right? Otherwise, Obi-Wan is more than willing to do exactly the same, which Anakin comments on. And then we have a big fight as we move our way out, and the fight keeps going, and through this have the crystal refract and intensify the charge, which blows holes and passageways to get us through or kills the enemies. And intriguingly, just, it doesn't always just reflect backwards. It goes and refracts all kinds of directions. But luckily, never refracting toward our heroes. Very convenient crystal right there. And eventually, well, they really have no way of getting the crystal actually all the way out. So they end up blowing it up, hitting it with big old cannon blasts time after time after time, which will then destroy the entire ship. So yeah. Luckily, we don't have to feel bad about this, remember, because it's just a bunch of droids on the ship, so we're not actually killing people. Grievous gets off the ship too, although in a better way than we've done sometimes in the past, where Grievous makes his ever-popular escape. In this case, he was actually shooting at them when he was first getting into his ship, so it wasn't just him making an escape. So I like that. That was a little nicer that way that time. And hey, that is pretty much it. We get a last little piece where we see the Jedi Council talking again at the end. Everyone's back on Coruscant. And this helps with somewhat with the timeline of where this arc takes place. Because Mace makes a comment of, oh, now we'll never know what the purpose was. And Yoda's like, no, this wasn't Dooku, but the Sith Lord. This clearly takes place somewhere after the Fives arc and prior to, certainly well prior to 7, I would say. Hard to say exactly where, though. I guess, a lot of the missing episodes and arcs are probably in a similar-ish time frame. So probably would have been shortly into Season 6 originally, if I had to make a guess. Anyway, we also had a quick note about the giant kyber crystals being the center and power of all the mightiest weapons way back from the Sith and Jedi wars, way back. Which also makes an interesting question when we're talking about, say, some of the super weapons now. And also back to the comment of even what the sequel trilogy went ahead and did in terms of making our giant weapon, which was powered by kyber crystals. So yeah, no, this was an enjoyable episode again. Some banter throughout it, more so than the third episode, and I'd say more on par with the first episode probably in banter level. Maybe a little more so. Certainly not to the degree the second episode did, though. And hey, the little bit of lore on kyber crystals at the end was nice. I would have loved a little bit more even. Of course, I always love lore popping in and getting some more things to expand. And that was also an advantage here, speaking of expansion, was all of the pieces that we got that helped expand Utapau a little bit and the different species on Utapau. That's a nice little piece. Of course, here with it being unfinished, you don't quite get to see them as what it would look like, or the areas as what it would look like, but what can you do about that, right? Well, other than drive another large petition and maybe get another bonus season of Lost Arcs, that could be. So overall, yeah, enjoyable, and too bad the episode in the arc didn't get finished. And the banter in the arc as a whole is something I remember running into very early on in the show. I think it was season 1, the episode where they captured Dooku. That was probably one of the best examples in the show as it got filmed, where we really got some Obi-Wan and Anakin banter. But it just didn't happen much over the course of Clone Wars that I'm remembering. It also takes a certain type of episode and arc, because it has to be one that can play with that banter enough and be able to allow it to happen. If it's too serious, then it wouldn't fit in there at all. Or at least not to that kind of extent. And the other thing about this arc, again, that moment talking about Ahsoka and also talking about how Obi-Wan would react if Anakin failed him. Just, wow. Even just for that moment, I would love to have had it finished in full quality all the way through. Just that spot even. And also talking about this arc makes me sad just a little bit. All the mini scripts that went unproduced are such a tragedy when it comes to the show. It's not like a show where they only script things as you're getting to each bit, but with all these mini completed scripts, dang, so much out there that could have been filmed and made. Whether it be, say, this one, the Son of Dathomir arc, the 8-episode Ventress arc, the Ahsoka Under the Jedi Temple arc, etc., etc., etc. Well, anyway, so that is going to be it, everyone, for the first time watches for Clone Wars. This is the last one. I don't have anything else. There's no other unfinished arcs to really talk about. Even if I do end up doing that Ventress book sometime, well, that's obviously not a first watch. There's nothing to watch for it. It's something to read. But even then, that would be somewhere down the road, because that's a book that would take some time to get through, and I don't know how it would go about with the channel. But anyway, if there is something else you want to see, I'm sure I'm not done with Clone Wars in terms of making videos, just no more first-time watches. So if there's something, let me know. Maybe you want to see, say, some top 10s or some what-ifs or some more creative videos. Let me go ahead and know, and I will see what I can do. Once again, thank you for all your comments and going on this ride with me. I've definitely enjoyed all of you being there with me, all your comments as I've gone, and just seeing all the good positive reaction. And next week, I will be back to start into Star Wars Rebels for the first time. So same format as this one, and looking forward to seeing you there, and thanks for taking the ride with me. And until then, well, what about you? Did you love the banter in this arc as much as I did? And what's the unproduced Clone Wars arc that you most wish you could see, even if it's just in, say, this state of completion? Let me know down below in the comments. And thanks for watching. If you liked the video, help me out and give it a like, a share, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you back here tomorrow for another new episode of Freeform Disney. Have a magical day, and may the Force be with you. Always.